Welcome to the IREL podcast. Are you sick and tired of real estate gurus pitching their next free construction deal, only to find out years later they were completely wrong? Worried the next overseas conference you spend thousands to attend will only be used to sell overpriced lots in deserted developments? Join thousands of other international real estate seekers who are looking for their place in paradise without the sales pitch. Straight from your host, Taylor White.
Hey, real estate seeker. Welcome to the Overseas Property Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor White. I am proud to say this episode is brought to your earbuds, courtesy of my friends at HomeAway. If you're a homeowner or property manager and want to put your vacation rental in front of over 62 million travelers each month and earn incredible returns of up to $56,000 per year, then you must list it on the #1 vacation rental marketplace. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/rental to get started. We are vacation rental hacking today when I sit down and speak with Heather Baer from cottageblogger.com and the Vacation Rental Success Podcast. We will cover such topics as better explaining what vacation rentals are and why travelers are preferring them more on trips versus hotel rooms. Tells us who to watch in the vacation rental industry and why it's important to your real estate business. Reminds us to keep in mind our tourism demographic and being aware of local vacation rental bans that are sprouting up worldwide, and much more. Instead of telling you more, let's join Heather from Ontario, Canada. What's going on, Heather? It's Taylor White. I'm excited to have you on the podcast straight from Ontario, Canada, so we can get to know you personally. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, hi, Taylor. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. And yes, I'm from Ontario, Canada, the snow belt. After 5 months of winter, we're finally crawling out into some spring, which is wonderful. And I sometimes wonder why I came out here at all. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, at the end of the 1990s, we came out to Ontario to attend a family wedding. And although I am Canadian by birth, I'd never been out here before. And we stayed in a lakefront rental property and just fell in love with it. And like many people who are on vacation, they get carried away with the romance of buying an international property. So while we were over here in, I think it was 1998, we looked in real estate windows and we did a bit of dreaming. But unlike many others, we actually went through with it. And a year later, we came back. We bought our first lakefront property while we were still living in the UK. And that was the start of the story. So at the same time, I'd been running my own management consultancy and really needed a change. So we started a vacation rental company in the UK that specialized in just Ontario cottages. And I found myself coming over here maybe 5 or 6 times of the year, coming out on a weekend and viewing properties and then renting them from our UK company. After about 2 years, a couple more purchases, so we had 3 cottages over in Ontario while still living in UK. Then we took the leap and we emigrated. We immigrated here. So long story short, over the course of the last 12 years, we bought 7 properties. We live in one, and we created successful rentals with the rest. And I now run one of Ontario's leading rental management agencies, and I blog and do a podcast on cottage rentals, vacation rentals worldwide.
So, Heather, you are a true vacation rental insider, as I like to say, and you have Cottage Blogger, you have the Vacation Rental Success Podcast, which is fantastic. I know that you've written a book, Renting for Profit, which is available for purchase on Amazon. Just as you said, you have numerous vacation rental properties. And don't you also do the community support for one of the world's leading self-list sites?
Yes, I am the director of the owner community for vacation home rentals, and that's www.vacationhomerentals.com. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that one. That sort of passed me by. I do a lot of content writing and posting for that site. And yes, it is one of the leading rental listing sites.
So Heather, I have to ask, how do you fit in the time for all of that?
Mhm. Do you know, I asked exactly the same question. I interviewed Sue Zimmerman the other day about Instagram, and I asked the same question. I said, which hour of the night do you actually get to sleep? And she said exactly what I would say is, actually, I get quite a lot of sleep, but I'm a 5 o'clock riser. I just schedule out my day. And also, I'm so obsessed with this industry. I live it, eat it, breathe it. It's all I do. So probably a bit of a boring person, because even if I'm out running, I do triathlons. I've always got headset on and always listening to a podcast or two about the industry. So yeah, that's how I fit it all in, because I don't actually do anything else.
Well, Heather, that's why I couldn't wait to get you on, because 80% of the results, I believe, in most things comes from 20% of the work. And we're really going to focus now on vacation rentals. And what I'd like to know from you is, what do you consider a vacation rental? Because I know that we're talking about vacation rentals and not longer term leases.
Yeah, we're talking about properties that rent. And when we talk about short term, it's generally less than 30 days. So it could be weekend, it could be a short breaks, or a week or a couple of weeks. But generally, a vacation rental comes under less than 30 days. That tends to be what it's termed as, as a loosely based legal term.
And then why have you focused on shorter term vacation rentals versus longer term leases?
Oh, I think it's because of the tourism background. I got so wholly involved in tourism and why people go to different destinations for their vacations, that when I got into the sort of property business, I wanted to link the two together. And that's really where it came from. So I'm actually selling dreams, because when you're selling vacations to people, it's such a lot of fun.
So what do you think are some pros to vacation rentals versus long-term leases? One that comes to mind to me is that you can get more on a per night or per week basis on a vacation rental than you can a longer-term lease. What are some other great pros? The other thing that I was going to say, I've bought and sold something around 35 properties now in 5 countries. There's another thing, that when you buy property in foreign countries that you don't know all the ins and outs about, sometimes you might get locked in a longer term lease with the client that you can't legally get out, versus if they're renting per night or per week, then you have someone in and out fairly regularly. What do you think about that?
Well, that's it. People who are coming to a vacation rental, it's an entirely different demographic to the demographic that's going to lease for a long term. And those people, as you say, are going to be more perhaps local than your tourism folks. I mean, these are people that are coming, could be coming from any other country. In general, they're people just like us. So, I'm looking at buying a property in the Bahamas at the moment. So I'm going to do that specifically to rent as a vacation rental, because it's going to be people like me that maybe are coming from Canada or coming from the UK or coming from the States. They're going to stay for a short time. They're on vacation. I don't have to worry about the long-term or the type of wear and tear on a property that can happen in a long-term leasehold situation. People are in and out in a week. The property is checked every week or every few days. To me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I was involved in longer-term rentals back in England in the 80s. It's something that didn't really work for me at all. So I just, for me, and it's a really personal decision, the short-term rentals is the way to go. And of course, if you're in an area that is going to rent year-round, then that really is the no-brainer. Because if you're renting, let's say, 30 weeks of the year in a property that maybe you're going to be picking up $2,000 or $3,000 a week on throughout the year, you're not going to get that from a long-term rental.
So then, Heather, it sounds like a better comparable versus short and long term is a guest that would stay in a vacation rental versus staying in a hotel room. Does that make more sense?
Oh, for people staying in Vegas, I mean, it's such a growing business, Taylor. I mean, ever since sort of HomeAway came on the scene in 2005, it really is taking over, and as the accommodation of choice now, particularly for families. I mean, what better than having a property that is completely private, where they probably have a private beach or private waterfront. They don't have to share anything with anyone else. If they want their privacy, they can have it. So it is definitely the way that the vacation and tourism industry is going.
So, Heather, I know that you've spoken with a lot of great guests on your podcast. You write quite a bit at cottageblogger.com. And you had a great post that came out today. Who's who in vacation rentals? Of course, Heather, besides you and your son, Mike, who else should listeners follow?
Oh, there's so many coming on the scene now, Taylor. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Matt Landau, also located in Panama City.
In Casco Viejo.
Matt is an absolute powerhouse for marketing information. I mean, when I started writing back in 2003, 2004, there was hardly anybody doing this. And over the years, these great people are coming on board with so much experience. I mean, Matt definitely for anything to do with marketing. And he has such a great website at the vacationrentalmarketingblog.com for social media. And I think that anybody that's going to get into this business needs to be just about everywhere in terms of how they promote their property. So they need to be on social media. And of course, Google Plus is up and coming. I know not everybody agrees with me, but I think we should all be on Google Plus. And Alan Egan is from rentmoreweeks.com is the person to follow on Google Plus. And then there's Tyann Marsink, who is a fantastic photographer. She and her family own over 18 properties in Branson, Missouri. And let's see, Steve Salzman, very new on the scene, but he's doing Google Hangouts, so it's just something different. For anybody listening wants to take a look at my blog post, we're on Who's Who in Vacation Rentals. We are going to be expanding that over the course of the next few months to capture absolutely everybody who's out there writing about the business.
So one great resource for people to use to rent out their vacation rentals would be self-list rental websites. And there's 5 that come to mind off the top of my head. We have FlipKey, that's a partnership with TripAdvisor. We have HomeAway, VRBO, Airbnb, and Vacation Rentals. What are your thoughts on using those sites?
For anybody who's going to go it alone and do their own marketing, because there are 2 ways of doing it. You can go through a rental management agency, which will do all that marketing for you and you don't have to do anything. But if you're doing it yourself, then it's absolutely imperative that you get onto at least one, if not 2, of these major sites. And one of the reasons for that is for getting reviews. Because anybody looking for a vacation rental these days, so, I want to go on holiday, I want to rent a home, and I want to see what the other people who've rented it thought about it. So you've got to have live reviews on a listing. And TripAdvisor, obviously, with FlipKey, HomeAway, VRBO, Vacation Home Rentals, they all have live reviews on each listing. So it's not inexpensive to list with these sites. A platinum listing with HomeAway is in the region of $900 to $1,000 a year. But that could be a weekend or 2. It's going to cost you you perhaps need to rent an extra weekend or 2 to get that amount of money. But that listing is going to bring you plenty more business, plenty more traffic. So absolutely imperative to list on at least 1, if not 2, of these major websites.
And then, Heather, as a follow-up, do you have 1 or 2 or 3 of those major sites that you always list on for your properties, or does it just depend where the property is located?
I think it would depend very much where the property is located and what, maybe if you're in a major city rather than out in a more rural country tourist destination. In a city, you might want to be thinking more about Airbnb because they are a little bit more city focused and they are up and coming, and it's definitely one to watch. Just definitely HomeAway. It just is way, way above any of the competition. And that's where people are going. People are going to HomeAway. So really, regardless of where you are, I list on HomeAway, but you might want to list on Airbnb as well. And the other thing to think about is take a look and see where your traffic is coming from. If it's coming from somewhere local, and I'll give you an example of our own region. 90% of my rental traffic comes out of the city of Toronto to the properties that we represent. And we have several local listing sites, so listing sites that just focus on Ontario. And we get more traffic out of those sites than we do out of the large listing sites. So if you're in an area where a lot of your traffic is more local than international, then you probably think of looking for a local site too.
And we actually had John Gray on, who's Senior Vice President for HomeAway, and I know that they own VRBO.com. I believe they own VacationRentals.com. And they own something around 18 or 20 major sites, also BedAndBreakfast.com. Do you have any knowledge about using BedAndBreakfast.com whatsoever?
I don't. I know that's a new acquisition or a relatively new acquisition. As an owner, looking for somewhere to advertise, I'm not sure that's somewhere I'd be going to.
Exactly.
I'd be going to a focused and dedicated vacation rental listing site.
So then, Heather, why don't we talk about some 30,000-foot best tips and strategies to use on these sites? And one thing that you kind of briefly mentioned or talk about is to know your tourism demographic. Can you speak more about that?
Well, yes, depending, if I'll just go straight to Florida and Orlando. I mean,
sure.
The demographic is families. So if you're thinking of buying a property in Orlando, then you've got to think about the people that are going to come to it. And that will be usually multiple families. So maybe multi-generational groups or two families coming together. And one of them, it's a tip that a colleague of mine, Erica Muller, who is a realtor in Orlando, gave me. Very, very good tip. And she said, if you're purchasing in Orlando for people who are coming to Disney, she said, make sure the property has double master suites. And I thought that was when I thought about it, I thought, what a terrific tip, because most properties have, this great master suite and then a secondary bedroom that might have a queen bed in it, if you're lucky. But what she's saying is that, with the multi-families, that gives each family their master suite. So that was a really, really good tip. And another one was to make sure it's south-facing, because everybody wants that sunshine. So
that's fantastic. And then one thing I'd like to add, Heather, on that, if you don't mind, something else that's good on the flip side would be if you're buying in a market that focuses on business travelers, let's say Panama City, Panama, it could make more sense to buy a studio or one bedroom because it's just one person traveling than spending the money to buy a 3 or 4 bedroom place because you don't have families traveling. So it's not going to do you any good. You're paying more for the purchase and won't recoup that in your vacation rentals.
Exactly. And I was talking to Joel Rasmussen recently, who's written a book, which is the same title as my podcast, Vacation Rental Success. Joel owns 10 properties in Austin, Texas. And, they are city properties. So his focus is on that type of traveler that comes to Austin. And yes, it would be an entirely different view of purchase than somebody going to Florida or somebody going to Panama. So it's really important to get that, to understand that demographic. I've heard it called an avatar. Describe your ideal rental guest. And this is long before you purchase your place, know who your guest is, and then you're going to get it right.
And then something that's been talked about quite a bit more, Heather, is a vacation rental ban and knowing about those things for your local areas. Have you come across that at all in your own business?
Yes, indeed. In my own business, we deal with vacation rental bans and restrictions all the time. It's slightly different in Ontario because they're very locally focused, and it's small townships issuing bylaws that are banning rentals of less than 30 days or banning them altogether. So it really is important to know where you're buying and if there is a restriction in place. Going back to somewhere like Orlando in Florida, every homeowners association in different areas will have different rules on rental. So it's pretty tough if you buy a property in let's say a gated community in Davenport, and you're all gung-ho and raring to go and get rented, and then you find that the homeowners association has a complete ban on rentals. Now these bans are popping up across the world. It's not just in Ontario or in Orlando, but I remember looking at buying a property in Sedona a few years ago, and then finding that there is a ban on rentals of under 30 days in the town of Sedona, or city of Sedona. They're happening in Berlin, London, San Francisco, New York. Really, really important to check that out. And not just what is currently a vacation rental ban or restriction, but to look ahead in the future and really do the research and see if there's any potential for something happening in the future.
Heather, it kind of sounds like the hotel industry is banding together, kind of like what the taxi industry is doing for Uber. Does that kind of make sense?
To a degree, and in certain areas, yes, you'll find it's. I've always thought that what was happening in Sedona was driven by the hotel and resort industry. In other areas, it's simply residents. Joel Rasmussen talked about Austin. He spearheaded the Austin Vacation Rental Alliance, which was a group of owners that lobbied the Austin City Council to counter the rental ban that was going to be introduced, and that was via about 60 residents who'd got together and said, we don't like vacation rentals. And they were a powerful group. So it was just a matter of Joel and his group becoming a little bit more powerful.
So, Heather, I would like to head back a little bit and focus more on the self-list vacation rental websites. As a for instance, let's pretend that we're going to use HomeAway or VRBO.com or Airbnb. What are some best tips and strategies that you can offer as far as placing a listing on the site? 3 things that come to mind for me would be using great copywriting, images, and then something that you mentioned before, getting great customer reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head with those 3. I would add having an exceptional title. We often if you go onto a listing, you'll often see the title being 4-bed, 3-bath, Wi-Fi hot tub.
Not very descriptive. It's not very exciting, Heather.
And it's not. The title has to be seductive. It has to draw people in to want to look at the rest of the listing, because they see that title first, then they see the first image, and that first image has got to be something spectacular. You see so many images where the feature image is the outside of a property showing the garage doors. Not exciting. So it's choosing a fantastic image, and it doesn't have to be of the property. It could be of somebody canoeing or kayaking, or somebody jumping in a swimming pool, something that would really make people go, I have to go there. Then you follow it up with really, really good text that I was a hypnotist many years ago, and I used hypnotic language in helping people. And I
knew it. I could tell, Heather. Because you have me hypnotized over here. I knew something was going on, and now it makes more sense.
Yes, and I can make you cluck like a chicken. No, seriously, the language you use needs to touch on every sense. It needs to get people feeling things, tasting things, seeing things, and hearing things. So you use language like imagine. Imagine spending a warm afternoon soaking up the sun with a cool glass of wine, that sort of thing. Rather than saying, come to my 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. And then the final thing that I think it's probably one of the most important, every listing site has an About Us section where you can describe yourself as an owner, describe why you bought the property, why you love the region, and why you think people will enjoy the place. Because I think recently with so many scams being talked about in the media, people are becoming more and more suspicious, and they want to feel confident about booking a property. And if an owner is there saying, look at me, this is who I am, this is why I bought it, I'm a real person, then that is more likely to elicit confidence than anything else. So yeah, headline, great feature photo, fantastic text, and an About Us section.
Heather, something else that comes to mind that's not nearly as sexy is being placed high up in the searches. So for instance, let's pretend I'm flying to Fortaleza, Brazil, and I'm on the website. I'm realistically not going to go to page 20 or 25 or 30 to find a rental. I'll probably be looking on the first page or second page or third page. So under certain circumstances, does it make sense to pay more if I'm an owner or a property manager to get listed higher?
In areas where there's a huge amount of competition, of course, it makes sense. You know, you want to get as high up there as possible. But this is where, particularly with somewhere that's competitive, this is where being in other places is important as well. Because if someone has a really great Google Plus page on their property and they use Google Maps as well, and somebody is seeking that area, it's very likely that Google Plus page is going to show up as equally with the VRBO or HomeAway listing. And I've seen that in a number of places. And in fact, Steve Sassman, who I just interviewed for the podcast, was talking about just this. And he has got himself on page 1 of Google by just that judicious use of the whole Google platform. But yes, in answer to your question, I think having a premium listing is really, really worth it.
And how important is pricing your property correctly on a per night or per week basis? Do you think it's more important to focus on a great title, great images, customer reviews, and then therefore people will focus less on the price, or is that not true?
I think it's important to be competitive. I mean, it's easy to price yourself out of the market. However, if you've got the most amazing pictures, the seductive text, people will just want to go there, and they will pay that extra to do so. But you really are taking a gamble. So it's probably worthwhile keeping the rate very competitive or just a little bit under the competition until you've got a good raft of reviews. Once you've got 10 or 15 or more 5-star reviews, then that could very likely push away any concerns about rates if it was a little bit higher than the competition. Because, generally people, they want something to feel confident in, and if they have to pay a little bit more for it, they will do. But I don't think you should ever start with a higher price than the competition if you don't have any reviews.
So Heather, there's something else that comes to mind when we're dealing with vacation rentals, and we just talked about sites where you can pay to list. What about sites like Craigslist that are free? What are your thoughts on Craigslist or any sites where you don't have to pay a premium to actually list on?
Well, I have a lot of personal experience with, now not Craigslist, up here in Canada, it's called, we use something called Kijiji, but very, very similar. It's a free to list classified online advertisement. Number one, it doesn't tend to attract the quality guests that you're looking for. People who are looking around on Craigslist or up here on Kijiji are looking for a bargain. Secondly, it really does attract the scammers because it's much easier for a scam artist to post a listing that they found somewhere else on one of those sites. So in general, I would be avoiding them. They bring a lot of traffic for sure, but it's not quality traffic, and in general, they don't tend to convert that well.
Well, Heather, we have only scratched the surface, but we're right about time. Do you have any final tips or pointers that you might want to share?
I think the last one is just a little bit of a story about when I bought my first property in Ontario. We had a fairly limited budget, and when we came over here and we were met with a realtor, we told him what we wanted to rent it out, and he showed us a lot of these properties on huge lakes and far over our budget. Eventually, he relented and took us to a property on a river. And he said, "You'll never rent a river property, but here it is anyway." And to make this story short, we've since bought 6 river properties.
You proved him wrong.
Oh, I proved him wrong. Absolutely. I currently have a riverside property, and this is Ontario, remember, where we have 5 months of winter. We have had one weekend this year in the last 52 weeks where it hasn't been rented. And the reason for that is that the road is flooded and we can't get anybody in there. It doesn't matter where you are. If you know, if you've got your demographic right, if you know who's going to come. And because the thing is with us up here is that people just want water. They don't care whether it's huge water where they can take big motorboats out. They just want to come and vacation by the water. So we just found a much less pricey property, and were able to rent it very, very successfully, and did it for every single one after that. So I think the moral of that is, you don't have to go with the flow. You need to think about the people that you want to come and rent your property, not necessarily what would work for you yourself as a buyer.
Heather, I think that's a great story to end on. A jam-packed 30 minutes all about vacation rentals. And what are the best ways to follow you and what you do?
Well, you can follow me at www.cottageblogger.com. And my podcast is called Vacation Rental Success. I interview once a week show and interview other experts in the industry. So I'd love anybody to come along to cottageblogger.com. One thing we didn't mention, Taylor, was property management, and I've just uploaded a new ebook onto our website all about property management. So anybody thinking about buying a property, it's really something you need to think about.
Absolutely fantastic, Heather. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you come back again sometime soon.
I would absolutely love to, Taylor. It's been a real pleasure.
I want to thank Heather once again for breaking down why vacation rentals are becoming more and more of an option for travelers and homeowners alike. You can head on over to our site for complete show notes and easy ways to follow Heather and more information about her website and podcast. And don't forget, if you're a homeowner or property manager and want to put your vacation rental in front of over 62 million travelers each month and earn incredible returns of up to $56,000 per year, then you must list it on the #1 vacation rental marketplace. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/rental to get started.
You have been listening to the IREL Podcast with Taylor White. Be sure to hit up irelpodcast.com for more. That's irelpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.